everybody. Happy New Week. Hope you're doing amazing. I am very excited to be coming off our 45th retreat where we saw 22 authors smash out some books. So there'll be more books coming out at Christmas. But right now we have got one of our authors who's hot off the press, Vanshika Virmani from Sydney. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Natasha. I'm good, thank you. How are you going?
Excellent. I can't wait to talk to you. Your book is unique within this niche of the types of books we've helped people do. This is the first one in this area that has been written through our company, of course. So let me give everyone the official introduction. So what I might do while I'm doing that, you guys, I'm going to share Vanshika's book cover so that you can see it here on the screen. And and then I'll read out her gorgeous bio. All right. So Vanshika Virmani is the author of My Fight Against the Invisible Beast. She has written the book because she has had atypical anorexia nervosa for the past 9 years. However, she was not underweight. She eats every single day and has never been hospitalised for an eating disorder. While struggling with anorexia, Vanshika completed a Bachelor of Actuarial Studies and Commerce and now works full-time. In summary, she does not fit the stereotypical image of someone who's suffering from anorexia nervosa. So Vanshika decided to write the book to create greater awareness of eating disorders and share the things she has learned through her experience. So throughout her book, she's trying to show that eating disorders are more common than people realize. And importantly, that there is hope in life despite the diagnosis of an illness that has such frightening connotations. Vanshika is not a psychologist and she doesn't have a science background. She's merely talking through her own experience of living with an eating disorder. All right. So well done and congratulations. What a brave step to take to share this with the world. So tell me when did the idea of writing a book on this topic? Obviously you've had it for 9 years. When did it come, that I should write a book on this?
That's a very good question. So for me, it was actually early last year, so January of last year. So I still struggle to believe that 1.5 years later, I have like a book in my hand and it looks exactly like I had ever imagined.
I love it. So about January last year, and so that's 18 months ago. You and I worked through the publishing journey. Like we published the book. You didn't do one of our signature retreats. So the writing process, how long did that take you before we obviously met and had a conversation about, hey, now we need to publish this book?
I think it took me 6 months, but when I did reach out to chat with you, I had only finished my script. Like I was maybe like halfway, 3/4 through my script. I kind of just wanted a little bit of like guidance in that scenario where I was like, should I continue going along with this? How does this look like? That's why I reached out to you a little bit earlier within my writing journey.
Yeah. Beautiful. And you actually had a session with Stuart, as far as I can recall, where you guys organized a little bit the content and the structure so that it became what it is today. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit, just for other people writing on their own, because it is a lonely journey. I think when people are doing it independently, it requires a lot of discipline. What was your how often did you focus on the writing? Let's say it took 6 months, say, before we had a chat, I think, or to complete writing it. Did you allocate blocks of time, or when did you write and work on your manuscript?
I think I would probably do like half an hour to an hour before I went to sleep, but it was also like very ad hoc in nature because at that time I was very uncertain about whether I even wanted to publish. So it was more for my own benefit for the first like 2 or 3 months, I'd say. So, and on an as needed basis. And then after that, once I started the publishing journey, it became a little bit more like systematic and more organized. So yeah, not that often in the first 6 months, and then a bit more like frequent and more systematic after.
Once you make the commitment, it gets real, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
find that like people have notes in a million different places, and they're maybe just doing it as a journal or a healing process. But when you make a commitment that yes, I am going to publish this book, all of a sudden it's like, well, now the job needs to get done, because there's also like, you know, the commitment financially and all that sort of stuff. So well done. I think that's how you finish books. You make a commitment to someone else, and you're like, you get them out there in the world, and you did a wonderful job being more on your own. As I said, you had Stuart and then a publishing team to support you, but beautiful. I absolutely love your cover and what it stands for. So let's talk a little bit about the topic and what's inside the book, you know, and your journey, or, you know, what kind of you've been through. So talk to me a little bit about what are some of the hidden signs from the perspective of someone struggling with an eating disorder? What can it look like? You know, maybe some people are struggling, they just don't know.
Yeah, so for me, I guess the hidden signs are when so anorexia has some like stereotypes associated with it. Maybe stereotypes isn't the right word, but people think that it comes from social media. For me, it was just like a diet that went wrong. So hidden signs for me was extreme obsession with my diet that I wanted to implement, and extreme anxiety when I wasn't able to follow it on one day. So like lack of flexibility. But then hidden signs would probably be lying to my parents and family, and as well as like throwing away food, or saying I've eaten when I haven't eaten. Before then, no one actually had reasons to like doubt what I was saying. So it wasn't like they had a reason to start being like, oh, she's probably lying. But for me, if someone's struggling like with eating initially, like they say no constantly, and then all of a sudden the arguments subside, I'd be a bit concerned. If someone's like extremely into dieting and get extremely anxious when they can't go out to exercise on one day and are not as flexible, I think I'd just start asking questions. That doesn't necessarily mean they have an eating disorder. It's just when I'd be like, okay, do I have to ask other questions?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting the points that you bring up, you know, for people to kind of think, am I doing that? You know, like, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And the whole purpose of writing this book was maybe to bring awareness with someone who might be thinking, am I struggling with this? And am I doing things that might be on borderline what would be an eating disorder? Because as you said as we read out in your introduction, you know, you were never underweight, but it is that it sounds like it's that obsession of perfectionism as well, and following something, and then, as you say, lying or doing things around your family that are kind of that we shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think the two things that I want people to take away, maybe I'm going into your next question, but yeah. So the first thing that I really want people to take away is that like exercising does have some, like not exercising, but dieting and excessive exercise has some disadvantages. Obviously, it has a lot of advantages and benefits everyone's very aware of, but you also need to be aware of the fact that I think dieting like gives you 6 to 8 times, puts you at 6 to 8 times more of a risk of developing an eating disorder. It's along those lines. The numbers may not be exactly correct, but I feel like people aren't aware of that when they make that decision. Again, it's not a right or wrong decision, just something to be aware of. That's probably my biggest takeaway from this entire journey.
Yeah, that's and that's true, because you know, ultimately there's a healthy diet, but like, what's the difference between the word diet when it's just a normal eating versus the one that's very, I guess, regimented and things like that? Would you say that's the ones that are really like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you know, to you know, control calories? That's the ones kind of to stay away from, rather than like healthy way of, I guess, living your life.
I think it's more like when you notice the way that it makes you feel. If you feel that on one day when you can't follow that particular diet, you're okay with yourself, then that's probably all right. But if you're thinking that your entire life seems to be planned around that specific diet, whether it be going out with someone, a friend or a family, and you're finding yourself saying no constantly to those things, or you get like anxiety because you've eaten a piece of cake, that's probably when I'd be concerned. When food starts having a moral value, essentially, that's probably the time where you start being like, no, eating a piece of cake has not made me a bad person. Why am I starting to feel this way? Is it time for me to maybe take a break?
Yeah, that's really good. That's a good way to differentiate it, because like people can say particular things or stay away from their social life because there's certain things that they can't do when they go out with people socially, which starts to affect how you operate your mental health in that way. So yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the challenges in recovering from an eating disorder, and why is it worth the hard work that it requires? Like, I guess you've been going through it, and would you say right now you're still like, you're kind of in a recovery and like you're working on it every day?
Definitely. So I guess I'll start with the challenges first. The biggest challenge for me was recognizing that I was sick. So the reason I call it manipulative is it doesn't always feel like what you're doing is incorrect. So you start questioning whether you actually need assistance, especially because like psychological assistance can be expensive, it can be time consuming, it's a high level of commitment. So that part of your illness that by nature will try and convince you that you actually don't need to be able to like eat flexibly, I'm going to use that with connotation marks, junk food. It's fine if you can't eat a piece of pizza without feeling horrible about yourself. All of those words make it a challenge, but at the same time, unfortunately, there's also a diagnosis issue. Atypical anorexia, particularly because by definition, you're not clinically underweight. That creates problems with a diagnosis. So sometimes you actually have to fight for yourself to be like, I know, and I talk about this in my actual book as well. When I was, I think 14, 15, I started with a higher weight. So for me, being underweight was actually higher than BMI definition of underweight. But like, if you looked at me physically, I do question why the doctor didn't diagnose me with an eating disorder or anorexia. There are many reasons for that, but essentially what I'm trying to say is I had to get to a point where I had to educate myself and be like, no, I feel all the symptoms. I had to go to a GP and be like, no, I definitely need to see a psychologist. Can you please give me a referral? There were no issues with that. They did give me a referral, but that was the challenge. Then came the challenge of finding the right person for me. I had to go see 2-3 people. Once I reached the psychologist point, they were like, oh yeah, you definitely have an eating disorder. I'm not sure why it wasn't picked up. Probably just because like it requires a level of like expertise to be able to identify those signs. So then, yeah, once I even got to my first psychologist, a few weeks later, I was like, this isn't working for me. So being able to be like, okay, that doesn't mean you're wrong. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. Just means I have to like try again. That continuing. Yeah, that is a really good challenge. Not good, but difficult challenge. And then, other than that, I'm still in recovery though, but probably higher on in my journey, later on in my journey, hopefully only a few more months, but we shall see. The other question I think you asked was why it's still worth it. It's worth it a few months in. Well, it's worth it from the day in terms of your body, but you start feeling the effects only a few months in, but you start realizing that, you know, now I can go out for a holiday without necessarily having my parents behind. My parents trust me to be able to go on a holiday themselves without taking me along. That independence that you get, the fact that you can go out and you sense that, oh my God, I'm actually not that anxious anymore. Or you can like go out a bit later according to everyone else's time requirements and you're not struggling. So just those small little wins that you get every single day when you're like, oh, my life is actually a lot more freer than it was just a few months ago.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. There's just so many things you would be restricted in doing if you didn't detect it. So how does someone go about, what are the first steps someone would need to take if they have a suspicion they might have an eating disorder after listening to this interview? Like, what would you be your advice, just from a personal opinion, not from a professional opinion?
I think from a personal opinion, I'd probably do some research into it myself, look at what the symptoms and signs are. And then when you've picked up your signs and symptoms and you're like, oh, there is a match, there are some quizzes online that I took and I would recommend are pretty accurate in terms of what you should be looking out for, because they're very behavioral focused as opposed to like metric focused. You should do those quizzes if you're concerned, and then take the number and be like, oh, I think I'm concerned. Even if you're still concerned and the number doesn't, like, I'd probably just conduct some more research, and then I'd probably go up to a GP and be like, hey, these are the signs and symptoms I'm showing. Can I please go and like see a psychologist? And then that would probably be the best way to go forward.
It's a great idea. Yeah, quiz yourself is always, easy thing to do privately for yourself at home. But also your book is a wonderful resource for someone to read a story through someone who's lived it and what they did, to get an inspiration and some insights, behind the scenes. So what are some things, what else do you talk about in your book? What people likely to learn and understand as they read your book?
So my book is basically an honest transcript of the thoughts that that I would go through in very specific circumstances. So I think, yes, even initially when I was going through anorexia and I had no idea about it, I talked through some of the thoughts that went through my brain and why I genuinely thought I wasn't doing anything wrong. So if I'm a carer, it would help me be like, oh, this is why the person is doing what they're doing. But then I think probably my most favorite part and my most impactful part would probably be some of the challenges I went through in recovery. It's the validation aspect, because I know in my initial attempts, what used to stop me was being like, I'm the only one who is struggling. I go through certain scenarios that I experienced very openly, being like, I think once I was trying out ice cream with one of my friends and I had a panic attack after having the ice cream, and I talked through that and how my friend and I navigated the scenario. So for someone who's going through an eating disorder, like for someone who's not going through an eating disorder, the idea of getting so panicked just having an ice cream is very different. But for someone who is going through it, it's like, oh, someone else struggles with this as well. I'm not the only one. It's that validation. But then to motivate you, I talk through what my reasons were. So I talk through like stories of really special days in my life and how they were tainted by my eating disorder. And I'm like, oh, this is why I had to recover. This is my list. Maybe take this as an inspiration. So yeah, I think those are the moments where I think that people can get things. There's also a section where it's like, what did I find people saying helpful to me? So if you're caring for someone with an eating disorder, I talk through what helped and what definitely doesn't help and why that doesn't help. So it's not about accusing anyone at all, because that's pointless and it's really mean, because it's a really complex situation and scenario. It's just about explaining why certain actions are less helpful.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I just, thinking of it from that perspective, there could be a lot of parents out there or people who live with others that they might be concerned about as well. So it's not just a book about the person that potentially has the eating disorder, but the people that support them, and maybe also the people that might be suspicious that someone in their family has an eating disorder. They could read through and maybe recognize some signs and have gentle conversations to help guide them to the right support.
That's right. I think that's probably my main target market. And I would say that someone with actually struggling with an eating disorder is probably my secondary target market, because when you're reading that, you have to be a little bit more careful and you have to see where you are in the recovery process, about whether you're ready to talk about, like, hear about certain symptoms you may not necessarily be experiencing, because it can be a competitive illness. So yeah, for those struggling, I think I'd say please read it with caution. Read it if you feel you're ready to read it. For those who are caring or feel that you're suspicious of someone with an eating disorder, I'd please request you to definitely read it, because I feel like it will be a helpful resource, because it might give you a bit of insight about what's going through your child's brain, because they might be in the scenario where they're not ready to talk about it as openly. I know I definitely wasn't ready 4 or 5 years ago even.
Yeah. And it's not just children, is it? It can be adults who probably maybe have had it for a long time, and gone undetected, and it might kind of show those signs that that you explain in the book, that may have been suspicions, but people don't know what they don't know, and they could recognize that. So yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Your primary target market would be support people and families, who have someone, because perhaps the person who is in it is struggling and just kind of doesn't know, but like also may not be open to support or help as yet.
That's right.
When did you know that you wanted help and kind of put your hand up? How far in?
That's a very good question. So I think the first time I suspected I had an eating disorder was when I was 14, 15. And I reached out. So I picked it up through a book as well. It just had a list of symptoms that I was like, oh my gosh, I fit every single one of them. Went out to a counselor. She was very forceful about making me see a psychologist. I wasn't ready at that point to get anyone involved. So it basically meant that I took a step back and I was like, okay, I need to make like some changes so I can survive, but I'm not going to see anyone. So then I think I like survived the next 2 or 3 years in what we call quasi-recovery, which is where you're eating enough to survive, but you're literally living your entire life on eggshells. Anything slightly difficult in your life will throw you over. Very specific foods you're eating, very rigid lifestyle, but you're surviving. What happened with me after that though is I think I failed an exam, or maybe not even fail, I actually just got 2% less than I needed or wanted, and that threw me over completely. It meant that I was struggling to eat at all, and that's when I had to be like, okay, this is out of my control. That's when I realized it was anorexia, and that was probably just 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. All right, so how was the publishing process? You made a commitment, you had the time with Stuart, and then how has it been, in terms of the assistance that, you've had with Vivi and Julie, and, you're one of our youngest authors, I would have to say. We normally, our authors are 45 plus, usually maybe sometimes also in their 60s, but, for such a young person to step up and go, have the courage to write. And I think I told you this when we were talking originally, so how did you go? How did you find it all?
It was really, really amazing. So like I said, I had no like author experience, never had even considered writing a book. It made my life so much easier because I had someone who was like, not like who would follow up on me in terms of like deadlines or requests in terms of, okay, the transcript is ready and we started reviewing and editing. And I really needed that push because it wasn't the only thing that I was focusing on as well. And again, just lack of level of experience, lack of confidence, all of those factors combined, you do require a little bit of a push as well as just technical assistance. So obviously the technical assistance in itself was amazing, which is why the book is here. But I think for me, what was otherwise amazing was just like the emotional support, maybe the continuous push, motivation. So it was very helpful.
I always say psychologically, the support by working with people who have been through it with many authors is greater value than the logistical part. I often tell our budding authors who come to our initial seminar, it's all well and good, like anyone can learn how to do something or process. However, the mental funk, the psychology behind becoming an author, especially when it's your first time, that, putting ourselves out there, sharing something that's quite vulnerable, that takes a lot of courage. And I'm glad that you said that, because I do believe that, we do, most of our job is, coaching, and, I've got a psychology degree, so I've done a lot of mindset kind of stuff to understand that what goes on for people. And it's mostly that's the fears and doubts. And this is where people sometimes start to tinker at the last stages, like they start to find things that are not perfect and not let go. And that's all mindset. So well done. I you went through the journey quite smoothly, from what the girls in Publish have told me. I know you had interactions with Stuart and all that, and it's a beautiful book. So congratulations, and I hope that this interview, however you're listening to it, whether it's live or on YouTube or on a podcast, that if you think someone around in your life may need support, or maybe they're acting a little bit strange, go and read a book, do the research, because ignorance is not bliss, knowledge is power, and you can do something to change someone's life significantly. So where can people buy your book? Where do you have it? Where is it available?
So currently it's available on Amazon. So it's available on Kindle in an ebook format, as well as like the physical copy.
Yeah, I've got it up here. I'm just sharing my screen. So we've got it up here on Amazon. So if you just go there and put in My Fight Against the Invisible Beast, you can see your paperback and Kindles available, and all your good online reseller stores as well, guys. Will have it. So you might find it on Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, Booktopia, and all that. Amazon's your main one. But yeah, go get a copy, or at least download an e-version of it. And here's another closer up look on the cover. I love your cover. It's nice and simple and clean, and kind of the depiction of someone being obsessed of with weight, and kind of what it means and all that sort of stuff. So you've done a beautiful job, I have to say. So well done, and good luck. I mean, you've been working alongside all of this full time, and getting it out there. And I know in the future, I hope you're going to write more books, because they truly do change lives. And with a book like this, you literally will be saving people's lives and improving their quality of lives.
Thank you so much.
Guys, well, that was Vanshika Virmani with her amazing inspirational book. Go out there and support her, or pass the information to someone who may need it. So have a wonderful week, everybody, and as always, go and smash it out. Bye, guys.